Hello everyone, I am Trisha Mahajan. I am the Communications Manager at ADRA India, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this panel discussion on how anticipatory action is redefining the way we respond to extreme heat in India. As 2024 shattered global heat records, India witnessed firsthand how climate extremes are no longer future threats. They are present-day emergencies. But today's discussion isn't about the problem. It's about a solution that's gaining ground. ADRA India's anticipatory action model. A proactive approach that uses forecasts and local triggers to take action before a disaster strikes. We've already piloted the project in Southeast Delhi, Gwalior and Ahmedabad. ADRA India is working in close collaboration with the local governments and communities. Today we'll hear from key actors who made this possible. So let's dive in. Let me introduce you to our panel today. First, we have Imran Majid, Programs Director at ADRA India, who is leading ADRA India's Heatwave anticipatory action efforts. With deep experience in disaster risk reduction and community resilience, he brings critical insights into how local actions are translating early warnings into early help. Then we have Sonia, Manager of Program Development and Implementation at ADRA India, who has been at the forefront of driving the efforts of the anticipatory action model and instrumental in aligning anticipatory action with the government framework. Our third panelist is Rohan Jain, Manager of Programs and Business Development. Rohan is supporting the programs team in implementing the anticipatory action model. So let's dive in. And I'll start with my first question to you, Imran. Let's start with the big picture. What prompted ADRA India to pilot an anticipatory model for heat waves, and why now?
Okay, so I think before this question, we need to go a little bit backwards on understanding why anticipatory action is important. Basically, anticipatory action helps us and enables us to protect the vulnerable populations by acting early before the disaster even strikes, before the disasters come across. So with the increasing frequency of disasters and the climate-induced events that has been happening in the past many years, we have seen because of the climate change in the climatic patterns, we have seen a lot of disasters happening now. It is and because of these disasters, a lot of loss and damages have been reported across the country and across the globe as well. So to prevent those damages and losses, to protect the vulnerable, it is important and it is critical for us to act early in the events of disasters. So that is where actually the anticipatory action comes across, anticipatory action comes into picture. So anticipatory action enables us to save lives, and it also brings dignity to the humanitarian response and humanitarian work that we do by protecting and preventing communities by getting affected from the actual events of disasters. So I think that is where ADRA's biggest capacity and biggest role has been in implementing the disaster responses. So why not in anticipation of the disasters? Why always after the disaster strikes? So that is the whole model behind it, and we are still learning on anticipatory action. It's not that we are claiming that we have been pioneer of this this whole gamut of new sector, but we are trying to build on it. We are trying to learn a lot about it. So yeah, we have started this year. I am sure we will go along through this in the future. Yeah.
So can you walk us through the core components of our model? What does AA actually look like on the ground when it comes to heat waves?
So basically, see, anticipatory action is a model which is for the communities and with the communities. So we implemented the core of anticipatory action is keeping the community at the center of it. So when it comes to the heat waves or for any other disasters, it's about defining the early action protocols, wherein you define your triggers. What would be the triggers for activating the anticipatory action model? So you predecide and predefine the triggers of activating the anticipatory action response, and then you also kind of keep couple of menus for your disaster response ready, that these are the type of disaster responses that you may need to activate. I mean, I know we always respond and we always work along with the community's needs, whatever the community's needs are, but at the same time we have to be, when we talk about the anticipation, we have to anticipate a little bit ahead and keep things ready, so that our pre-planning and anticipatory thinking is aligned with the community's needs. So we keep our triggers, we work across along those lines, and then it's also about building the systems on the at the community level and also at the stakeholder level. Anticipatory action is not possible if it cannot happen just at the last minute. There has to be systems put in place. The governments have to be brought together. The government stakeholders have to be brought together. The community stakeholders have to be brought together on this, so that we are able to easily roll this out.
So speaking about government stakeholders, we've also collaborated with NDMA and DDMA to implement this model, and received immense support from the government. So how has working with the government improved the efficacy of this program?
Yeah, so actually, when we started working on anticipatory action, we were not completely focused on the heat waves initially. We were thinking of any other disasters like cyclones, floods that impact the country every year, every now and then. We have many states where the flooding happens every year. It's a concurrent happening there. Heat waves came across as I would say, newer disaster for us in the picture when we started working with the government of India's National Disaster Management Authority. We started engaging with them last year on our one of the reports, which was on the landscape study to understand the heat waves and what could anticipatory action mean that. So with that report, I think since NDMA was also working at the same time on preparing heat action plans for multiple states, especially for Delhi. They have developed a Delhi heat action plan, and which they launched this year. And we also realized that heat has been impacting communities since many years now. I think since last year it is more into discussion and more into talks, because there was a huge impact of heat on the communities, especially when we talk about Delhi, Rajasthan, some parts of Uttar Pradesh, some parts of Gujarat, and many other states. So we thought that this is one of the immediate and critical type of hazards that we need to address and that we need to work on. And why not to tag along the Government of India? So there are already plans in place. Government of India's National Disaster Management Authority is already working on heat action plans. So we ADRA joined hands with them to implement this heat action plan and became the knowledge partner for this. So we implemented a wide range of activities on different levels. Some at the community level, like community doing ranging from the community awareness in communities, schools, public health centers. Also, we worked with gig workers by understanding their thermal comfort. What does thermal comfort mean for them? Tag along with the informal workers, construction workers. And we're also conducting multiple consultations with different stakeholders like the NGO partners, private sector partners, to understand their perspective of on how they view this scenario on the heat, and how they are coming together and coming along to work on this to have an impactful outcomes out of this, the implementation of the Delhi Heat Action Plan.
Okay, thank you, Imran. My next question is to you, Sonia. And since you've been implementing this program actively and been part of the ground team, the field team, like you've been supporting them. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced while rolling this program out at the community level?
So when we started working, anticipatory action is comparatively a new term and new thing in the development sector. So even the community, if we talk about heat wave, their perception was it's not a hazard, right? It's part of their daily life. So they were not perceiving it heat wave as hazard. So they were not even interested why these people are coming and talking about heat wave. It's like daily thing for us. So this became a challenge. Their participation was impacted by this. So how did we overcome with this? We develop information and awareness messages based on their local relatable messages, I would say. And then correct information dissemination and relatable information was disseminated to the community. Then they started relating to the field staff and the information itself. Then the other challenge that we faced, because of we were targeting informal working groups, right? So their availability was another challenge. When we were going to the field, they were not available. So that became a huge challenge for the team, when to tap this community and when to catch hold of the community, so that we can build a rapport with them and conduct awareness generation among these people. So what we did, how did we overcome? We engaged with different stakeholders, and we also tweaked our working timings based on the availability of community. So we focused on early morning or starting our day early, and then some people were available during evening times as well. So we accommodated that as well while going to the community. And for the awareness generation, what happened, because we observed that community is not interested that much in the awareness meetings and sessions. So we came up with the approach of conducting street theaters. That became a huge success in all the interventions area, because in street theater we didn't have to put so much of effort. It was like it drew the crowds organically. We didn't have to put so much of effort, and the street plays, they were very culturally relevant, and they used local dialects, local characters, and the songs were there. They were enjoying it. Even they connected with the community by asking questions related to the awareness generation that happened during the street theater. So this is how we connected with the community and overcome all the challenges that we were facing earlier.
So, did that also help you in building trust as ADRA India with the community?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because then they realized these people are concerned about us, and they tweaked the whole, approach just because of the community. So that helped us a lot to build trust and reputation with the community members itself.
And do you think that heat wave is something, or heat threat is something that communities take seriously, or is it something that flood is like an immediate disaster, or cyclone is an immediate disaster? Heat is not, like, it's a silent killer. So people don't see it as an immediate threat. So, but do you think that people are taking that seriously? When you go to them, you ask them, you tell them that this is why we are here, they might be like, why should we participate, right? Because it's not something that's impacting us directly. But do you think they are taking this seriously?
Yeah, so interesting things happened during these awareness sessions and street theaters. As I said earlier, they were not perceiving heat wave as hazard, because it's like they're part of their daily life. When we started talking to them, and when we started giving the examples from the real life and the challenges that they are facing, and the impact that heat wave has on us, so they started relating to it. And they were like, oh, that's why I had those headaches, and I suffered this when I was out in the heat. So that this is how they started connecting or relating themselves to the messages. And again, street theater, because the characters were playing there, and they were demonstrating a certain situation, and in local dialect, locally accepted languages. So that also triggered them. Okay, now we need to start thinking or preparing ourselves for heat wave and heat strokes as well. Yeah.
We also, sorry, I'm going out of this, but like I'm having these questions. But we also gave, these school vests along with NDMA to traffic police officers who are standing there in the heat every day, which really helped them. And then we also engaged school children to plant saplings. Am I correct? Yeah. So how has that kind of, what's the response to that?
So I'll talk about Cool West first and then the greening initiative or the plantation drive that we had. So Cool West concept, again, it was a new concept because it is not tried before, at least in Delhi. So we explored and then we, thought that this can be introduced here. The idea was appreciated by every stakeholder. To whomsoever we met with, they appreciated the idea. Even when the launch happened and we actually gave it or handed over to the traffic police and PWDs, they were extremely happy because we demonstrated it there itself, and they could feel that this is actually helping them to reduce the temperature inside and raising their thermal comfort. So that was the feedback for Cool West. They were extremely happy. I still have the number of one of the traffic police official, and she chats with me very frequently these days. And recently she was communicating, I was trying it inside the house and outside the house, both the situations, and I'm extremely happy that this Cool West is given to me. And then about the greening initiative, see, if you engage children in these type of initiatives, you are, preparing a civilized individual or, person for the society. When that person grows up with this, when this children is growing, these kids are growing, they are taking that message with them. They are going to, they started actually discussing it with their friends, their family, and their relatives when they go out. So this message is automatically going in the society that this is important. If you are planting a tree, how this is going to repay us if we are giving some efforts or putting some efforts currently or maybe for few years, then what kind of benefits are we going to get, and what kind of benefits this environment is going to get with these trees. Yeah.
Okay. So my next question, partly you've answered, but it is to both you, Imran, and to you. Other than the greening initiative and the Cool West initiative, what are the other outcomes now that there's been some time since we started implementing this? What are the other outcomes that you've seen? What are the results or immediate impact of this pilot that we have seen on ground?
Yeah, so as I touched upon earlier when I was talking to you, one, we have seen changes in the community in terms of they have now started talking about heat wave, right? Why they have to prepare themselves, why it is important. So this is one change because when I was in the field and I was observing the awareness sessions and street theater, I could see the kids and people, talk among themselves. Okay, this is why we get heat stroke, now we have to be more careful. And that conversation started from there itself. So, and then they take this conversation to their families, to their friends. This is one. Then on the stakeholder part, now we have more NGOs, CSRs and government. They have started talking about anticipatory action and heat wave. It was not discussed broadly earlier. So this is a great impact that I see. Then the third thing that I want to talk about, ADRA India also developed early action protocol for heat waves. So that is there. And these three, I see these are the very big impact on. Yeah.
So just one thing to add here is it's too early for us to talk about the impacts here, because when it comes to talking about the impacts of anticipatory action interventions with regard to heat waves, it's about piloting right now. We are in the piloting phase because heat wave has been considered as an hazard very recently. Earlier, it was considered as part of life. Like Sonia said, community does not consider or treat it as an hazard. But now it is being considered as an hazard because the heat has been incessantly getting increased every day, day in and day out. Like every year it increases. And we are seeing the impacts of heat not just in the months of June, July, May, June, July, but also in the winters as well. Because winters are not cold how they used to be earlier. Even in the Himalayan region, the Himachal Pradesh gets heat wave. Maybe the temperature there does not exceed 35, but 35 is too hot for them. In J&K, we had a heat wave this year. intense heat wave, they call it. Maybe in comparison to Delhi, the temperature was very less, but for them, beyond 30 is a heat wave. So we're piloting multiple interventions like you talk about the cool vests, you talk about the green space. Creating green space is not piloting actually, because green space is one of the proven solution for tackling the heat waves. It is,
and it's been happening.
It has been happening.
Yeah.
It has been considered. It is the only solution to deal with the urban heat islands. We are creating more urban heat islands by using more concrete, asphalt, and whatnot. But these are the green spaces are the only hope, I would say. And nowadays people talk about the cool roofing solutions by using different techniques on their roof so that the temperature in the building reduces. But that is also, I would say, it has different parameters. It can be afforded by some, may not be afforded by somebody. So for a general population, for the vulnerable population, I think the green space is one of the common area where we talk about.
Plus, in green spaces, it's more like we are also kind of contributing to the overall
general biodiversity, environment.
By reducing the heat in the buildings, we are just we are only focusing on certain populations, not on the entire.
Exactly. And the cool vests is another pilot which we tested with the traffic police workers, the PWD workers, which Sonia was talking about. I think that is also in the pilot phase. That may work out, that may not work out. We are not worried about the failure of these activities. We are just concerned about getting positive outcomes out of these pilots, so that we know and we understand what is the future for us to deal with this increasing heat. Yeah, thank you.
So again, another question to you: were there any surprises, like positive or otherwise, that shaped how we now think about heat preparedness or anticipatory action? Are we going to change our approach a little bit?
I think the surprises came from the beginning. How the local government in Delhi, especially, I would say, to begin with, how they have been very interestingly and unconventionally being involved in the implementation of heatwave, because heatwave is not categorized as a disaster, it's not categorized as a hazard also. But how the Delhi government has come forward, they have been very proactive in putting systems in place and measures in place to address the heat in Delhi. So that is one positive surprise which came along, because we were not expecting government to be too proactive in this, and that too at this stage, very early stage. But that is very good to know and very interesting for everybody to come along. Also, we're getting a lot of, like Sonia was mentioning earlier, we're getting a lot of positive messages and positive support in terms of at least showing the interest only from the private sector partners. We recently had a private sector consultation along with NDMA in the month of July itself. So we got a good number of people on board. They're talking about it, they are working on it, so they are ready and willing to come along as a community of practice to work with us on this, on addressing the impacts of heat. And also towards the broader anticipatory action model, there are a lot of NGO workers, NGO professionals, organizations who are reaching out to us to come along as a community of practice to develop and build the working group on how we can implement anticipatory action in India, which is right now not there, but there's a huge interest on it. So this is surprising, because we started very small. We started in bits and pieces, not at a very concrete level, because as I said earlier, we are still learning about it. But there's a huge interest from multiple stakeholders: government, private sector, NGOs, or different academia. So everybody's interested in contributing to this whole new area of work. Yeah.
And then my next question is to you, Rohan, in continuation to what Imran said, that what now do you think is needed to scale this model to other heat-prone regions? Because right now we have it in 3 regions, and we want to scale it. And as Imran is saying, we have a lot of interest. So what do you think we need, and what role is it that donors and governments can play in expanding this program further?
Okay. So I think before really talking about being able to scale these programs, I think within the Indian community, we first need awareness on early action, and we need more discussion on anticipatory action, because it's not something that we are really talking about much in India. Scaling up comes at a later stage, once we started working on it at a broader sort of level. um, like we've been discussing, even the interventions that we have done, we are still calling them pilots, because we are doing them, one, at a smaller scale, and two, because we are also, as an organization, learning. um, I think an important component here for organizations like us and for other organizations is to come together and also share learnings and share knowledge. Like Imran said, one of our initiatives going forward is going to be a community of practice for the private sector, because we are seeing interest from the private sector. So, um, if I were in their shoes, I would, rethink my corporate social responsibility strategy. For example, if I've been focused more on providing support and relief, after a disaster strikes, or if historically I've been more involved in responses, can I now, make more investments in preparedness? Can I now make more investments in making communities resilient? Because a common belief is that when we are doing anticipatory action or early action interventions, we're reducing the impact of disasters, or somehow we'll ensure that they don't happen. But that's not what this is about. It's not about disasters not happening. Disasters will continue to happen. We can't stop them from happening. What anticipatory action, in a very simple term, in a very simple sentence, means is that we make communities resilient enough so that when disaster strikes, they're able to deal with those negative consequences in a dignified and a more humane way. They're more prepared to deal with the negative consequences. So for communities, it's up to organizations, it's up to local bodies, it's up to the panchayats, it's up to the DDMAs, the block development officials, on how we can take this to the last mile. For donors, yes, to put more investments in this. And for local government and other government agencies, I think just continue discussions, continue conversations, make more awareness on this topic. Not working in silos, like bringing everyone together. So why not expand the community of practice to other stakeholders also? Why just the private sector? Why can't implementation organizations also come together and talk about this? Maybe there is an organization that we don't know is doing really good work, so why not talk to them? And also, we have the advantage of being in a region where our neighboring countries have done a lot more work than we have on this. So how can we foster regional cooperation? How can we foster regional learning? And I think as ADRA, we have an advantage because we have our regional presence. So how can we learn from them? So I think internally, that's also for us to deliberate.
One thing to add here on this would be we are also looking at a vertical approach on scaling up this. It's not like an upscaling of us to this to other areas or to larger areas, but in a country like India, where we have a strong disaster management mechanism in place, a strong disaster management system in place at national, state, district level. We have DDMAs, SDMAs, we have NDMA, all the protocols, guidelines in place. We have a huge workforce of around 1 lakh Abda Mitras into place. And then the cluster systems, not cluster systems at the thematic level, but at least at the community level in the blocks where we work. So this anticipatory action also means to strengthen their capacities further, enhancing their capacities further, to create models which we can present as the success models for government to pick up, government to take up, or other organizations are working on anticipatory action to pick up, so that this is replicated by the government itself, not by us, but we are working. So that is how it is a vertical kind of a model, like working along with the existing systems to let them scale it up further. Yeah.
But many states are still treating it like a seasonal event rather than a hazard, rather than an emergency. So, what policy shift do you think is needed by the governments to actually change that and see that as an active emergency, not just a seasonal?
Yeah, so first of all, heat is not a notified disaster. It's at the national level, like a cyclone is or a flood is, heat is not yet a notified disaster. So that's the first policy shift that
Which is so interesting because we have so many people every year dying because of heat waves. So
yeah, which is not to say that there's not enough happening at the policy level, as we are seeing more and more cities are coming up with a heat action plan. So it's in a way good that there is a bit of a decentralized approach to dealing with heat. Not everything needs to come from a top down approach. Letting because the impacts and effects of heat are very different, like also Imran touched upon. The impacts of heat wave in Delhi could be very different to the impacts of heat in Bombay, because it's not just temperatures that we're talking about. When we often talk about the effects of heat or heat waves, we only talk about temperatures, but we have to take into account other factors like humidity. So heat index, talking about that, is very important. The effects that dry heat has on someone is very different to the effects that high humidity and heat has on someone. So are we talking about that in our policy, or are we only looking at temperatures? Some states have not notified heat as a disaster, but they've started talking about it in a more policy and regulatory framework way. I think about 7 or 8 states are about to declare heat as a disaster. So I think more and more states that are especially affected by heat every summer need to start doing that. And I think it's also for organizations like us who are working on the ground to share our learning from the ground, to work closely with the government to come out with these policy recommendations and suggestions that can be taken up.
So, like, could a multi-hazard anticipatory action framework be feasible for India, covering not just heat, but floods, droughts, or vector-borne diseases?
Yeah, because see, heat, like you said in the introductory session, a cyclone or a flood is a one-time catastrophic event, but a heat wave lasts for a long time. A heat wave can also be coupled with, say, high humidity. A heat wave can also happen when there is, say, urban flooding happening, or a heat wave can also happen coupled with an outbreak of a disease. So if we're looking at this only in silos of, we're only going to be looking at an approach towards heat and not taking into account the other things that are coming along with it, it's not going to be beneficial ultimately to the community. So having a multi-hazard approach, I think, is always more beneficial. Of course, we need to do a lot more thinking of how we could actually operationalize this, how it would look on the ground, and that's, I think, where we are also learning. So yeah, it's a learning opportunity for us.
One thing to add here is also, I think this will answer to you for one of the first questions that you asked me about why heat wave, as why ADRA, what prompted ADRA to also work on the heat waves. So when we talk about anticipatory action, as all of us said, that this is a learning phase for us and we are learning. Heat wave comparatively is a kind of hazard which is easy to anticipate. In a way, like, we know when winters are over, we know, like, there's a time in the month of April when the heat will begin, or maybe in May it gets when the heat increases. So IMD is well positioned to kind of give us early warning on this, and it is easy to anticipate. So we thought of also kind of going ahead with an easy hazard, that wherein we can learn a lot, wherein we can scope a lot of things. Sometimes floods are very difficult to anticipate. We are unable to anticipate all the flood situations, like current one in Himachal Pradesh. I think there are certain areas where the people and the government were not able to anticipate the kind of flooding it would be, or cyclones cyclones are also easy ones because we can anticipate, we know earlier how it would be. But so when it comes to the heat waves, in comparison to the floods and others, it is a kind of flexible area for us to learn a lot and pilot a lot, and also in aligning with that with the government actions, what they're doing at the moment. Yeah.
So now I have a final few questions or closing reflections. So, and this is for everybody to answer. So if you had to describe the pilot in one word, what would it be?
I think prepare, anticipate, and act. 3 words, not one.
Yeah, 3 words.
Yeah, I think I'll give a word proactive to this response.
Yeah, I would probably call it resilient, because that's what we're aiming to do, to make communities resilient.
And what are ADRA India's immediate plans for 2025 now on this?
So I think in 2025 and beyond, what ADRA India is planning is primarily to build partnerships and collaborations on anticipatory action, and also on the implementation of Heatwave program. You call it response, Heatwave response, you call it Heatwave program, you call it implementation of the heat action plans, whatever. But our primary focus is to build partnerships and collaboration. And we are working along with multiple partners in private sector, with NGO, in the NGO NGO sector, and also with the governments to build to talk about anticipatory action more often, and with special focus on heat waves currently, as because the government of India is right now focusing more on heat waves, but we are not forgetting about the other hazards. So while we are not forgetting the other hazards, we are also working, planning to work on building early action protocols for other hazards as well. Like we developed an early action protocol for heat wave in 2025, first quarter of it. In the later quarter of it, we want to target other hazards like floods, cyclones, primarily. Maybe something on landslides, maybe something on drought, if we happen to have those opportunities in those states. Because right till now we had not much opportunity to work on in the drought situations. But if we get to happen thinking on those lines, we can do that as well. So yeah. But and those early action protocols, we are also not planning to do it in silos. We want to bring other partners as well on board to work along with them, like we did it in Assam. We brought Assam Interagency Group on board. They did they piloted our tools on anticipatory action in multiple communities. So we are planning to consolidate them and come up with an early action protocol for at least Assam. So in India, there is one trick, because we're a big country, very diverse country. We can't have early action protocol, standard early action protocol for all the states. We will have to customize it for each state. So right now our focus is on Assam, and we will scale it up to other states. At least we will have one protocol in each region ready in the next 1 year. Yeah.
And what's the one thing, and this is to you all, what is the one thing you hope people take away from today's conversation about heat waves and about preparedness?
I mean, I just hope that people start talking about it more. People start, look at this as an opportunity to also not just see this as a knowledge sharing platform, but also a platform for collaboration. So I think at ADRA, like Imran said, going forward, our focus is going to be at at a more zoomed out level, where in the first year we worked on the ground, we worked with communities, we had some learning. How do we quote unquote scale it up internally, and work at a higher level, work at a more policy framework level, work to build collaborations, work to take this forward. So yeah, my one word for 2025 when it comes to heat wave and early action is going to be collaboration. So I think that's our vision for the next 1 year to scale this up.
I would say I would like the people, start focusing on preemptive approach than a reactive approach. Thank you.
One word from me would be, along with these two words, is localization, basically. So, localization of capacities and localization of response mechanisms. So, when I was speaking about how we want to move forward for next year with making more protocols, we also want all of us as organizations, like at ADRA, we want us to build our internal capacities and systems to be able to implement anticipatory action responses. It's not just the communities. We have to also be prepared for this. So yeah, and to do that, I think localization, collaboration, preemptive is the key that we need to focus on. Yeah.
Do you have anybody has any closing remarks or any closing thoughts?
I think thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk on the anticipatory action. We have been working on this since I would say last November very actively. We started piloting some anticipatory action tools in Himachal Pradesh. We began from there, but with those learnings, we went to NDMA, speaking about it, thinking of we will do something on cyclones, but the focus of NDMA right now was on so much on heat waves. We got carried away. We liked that. It's not just they wanted and we did it, but we also liked the idea. We also liked to work on the heat wave because we were also facing the heat. Me, being from a place where it's almost every time cold, very cold state, I feel it very hot in Delhi. So when they spoke about heat waves and I read the heat action plan, I felt this is the right thing to do personally also. So that is the localization as well. So then we tagged along with the NDMA, and now I think we have come along very far in this journey, and let us keep talking about it on these platforms and bring more partnerships and collaborations on this.
And not to forget the studies, that in-depth studies
Yes.
that we published,
Yeah.
didn't publish.
I think we are intending to do more. We are already in process of doing 2 studies. One is on the thermal comfort with the informal workers, especially on the gig workers, and second is on the landscape study of to understand the impact of heat on the informal settlements, the people living in the informal settlements, people engaged in construction work, gig workers, and also the populations in the peri-urban areas, rural areas of the cities like Delhi, Maharashtra, Faridabad, whatever. So we are also doing that kind of study. So it is a long journey. It has just begun. So there is a long way to go away. Okay.
All right. Thank you to all the panelists for such an insightful discussion. Today, we've seen that anticipatory action is not just about technical intervention, it's about a mindset shift. So, we don't need to wait for suffering to act. And it's only possible when science, governance, and communities come together and work hand in hand. So, to everyone watching, we invite you to engage with the model and support it in its scale up, and most importantly, carry this conversation forward in your own work. So, thank you for joining us, and bye.